All right, welcome back to TAC Ops. I'm Greg. Again, I'm joined with Eric.
Howdy, howdy.
And today it's just going to be the two of us again, another live episode, possibly another tester, before we get ready for our first guest to be live next week, hopefully. But first, as always, this episode is sponsored by the Commando store. Commando with a K store. They're an online military surplus store. Sell everything, different goods, different hats and patches and shoes and boots. I know I've got a few messages from different people on there who said they've ordered and they enjoy it. So check them out at least. You can use our coupon code TACOPS on your first order, get 5% off. Again, that's commandostore.com. All right, Eric, what's the topic today?
Yeah, man, I think we wanted to talk about nukes today. We wanted to try to keep this one a little bit to a single subject and instead of just talking about news, because it's been pretty weak in the news subject this week, so nothing crazy is happening. So we wanted to just talk about nukes this week, and we came across the 2020 budget, and inside the 2020 budget it's always a really good information for open source intelligence, right? Because it always shows you what they plan on doing without them telling you what they plan on doing, right? Because you have to explain to the people why you're spending the money.
You have to justify it, right?
Right. You don't have to be super specific, but you have to be like, hey, look, this is the project we're working on. This is what we want to do. Even though we show you this picture of the B-21 Raider and this is what it looks like, this may not be what it ends up being.
Right. Yeah, it's just an artist rendering right now.
Right.
But maybe I should turn my computer. You want to be able to see this, or can you see it there?
No, it works.
Okay. So the interesting thing about the budget is, like you said, they're not going to devolve any real details about it, but you're going to get a good idea of how much, the basic details of the project, and then how much they're spending on it. So the B-21, if you guys follow along with the stuff, it used to be called the Long Range Strike Bomber. I remember that name for a while, and they used to have that 2021 bomber. I don't know whatever happened to that. I think it kind of all morphed into this B-21. It's really going to be similar to the B-2. Eric and I were just talking about that before we started. Similar to the B-2. According to Tyler Rogoway, this was interesting. So if you guys listened to the last podcast, he was saying that it's going to be unmanned. You remember that, Eric?
Right.
That was interesting to me because I have not heard that. I mean, I believe Tyler knows a lot more than we do. Like, a lot more than we can probably ever hope to know combined.
Right.
But in the image here, and again, like Eric was saying, this is just a rendering. But if you look closely, you can see windows in there. And, a drone doesn't need windows necessarily, unless it's for a camera or some sort of sensor. But even so, that would be, not in the most advantageous position. Normally, you'd want it underneath so you can look down at targets and everything. The most interesting thing, as always here, since it's a budget PDF here we're looking at, is how much they're spending on this. So for 2020 alone, they're spending just slightly more than $3 billion. And that's all on research, development, testing, and evaluation.
Right.
That's it. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
For a new bomber.
Man, on a bomber, right.
It's a lot of money. And then last year, for this year actually, 2019, they spent almost $2.3 billion. Year before that, 2018, just shy of $2 billion.
On a strike platform, not a weapon, right? There's always a big difference, right? And I think
Right.
what we're going to talk about later on in the podcast is starting to get into other platforms like the Columbia class and all these other really expensive platforms. And it's going to be really interesting to see that, because $3 billion, I mean, that's a lot of money for a strike platform, especially just an airplane. It's not something that has to sustain 200 people for months out of the year. It's just a guy flying for a day maybe, and that's it.
Because of that, you need it to be a certain shape to be able to fly, right? And then you need to be a certain shape for stealth.
Right.
And you need to also have enough fuel, and only carrying one or maybe two people at most. So submarine you can kind of build a little bigger. They're all basically the same shape. Does a shape of submarine? You've noticed a lot. Pretty much every submarine more or less looks the same. Right. The same basic shape. Does that play into just not hydrodynamics, like being able to water, or is it shaped a certain way for sound reduction? Do you know much about that?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of everything, really. It's a platform, so they have to kind of design it for all of that. You know, that teardrop design you see
Right.
that came around in the 80s, or probably early,
60s
wait,
or
yeah,
something.
earlier
Yeah,
than that.
after
Yeah,
World War
geez.
II.
Yeah, it seems like it's new, but yeah, it's that Nautilus design where it's that teardrop design it's for everything. You know, you have I think the main design of the front that you see is, especially when it comes to American submarines, for the sonar, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the bow sonar, so
Right.
you have to have a sphere in there, but you still have to keep it to a sort of a point, but you don't want it to be pointy because that would just not be worth it, right? So you just keep a dome. They're made out of reinforced plastic. It's like a fiberglass. That design, it's just the same as the torpedoes. They all have that teardrop design because it's a really efficient design.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the B1 here. I actually see someone in the comments here wrote, it's supposed to cost $500 million each, and that was the plan. You know, it's not going to cost anywhere near that. It's probably going to get up to $1 or maybe even $2 billion.
Right.
I believe the B2, you know, prices vary depending on if you add in research and development and everything.
So this is just
But they're like
procurement, or is this research and development?
No, so $500 million to purchase each aircraft.
Can you scroll down a little bit because
So-
it'll actually show you like the okay.
Right. So they haven't procured any of them yet.
Okay,
So it won't tell
oh
you
wow,
I'm
this
up
is
there.
all research
Right.
development.
So they're pouring all this.
RDT and E, what does that stand for?
It's research, development, testing, and evaluation. So that would be, you know, obviously not only researching it and developing it, but also testing it
right.
and evaluating it. Those are kind of similar words, but they haven't procured anything yet. Not even the lead development. I guess maybe, you know, that might come eventually. It says on here it's supposed to be fielded in the mid-2020s. So there's still a few more years. And I believe it's actually supposed to be have its first flight soon.
Right.
Like within the next year or so. Or
And
less than that.
And I think the other thing about high research numbers is if they're trying to get it out quick, they're going to spend a lot more on it over 1 year than they would over 2 years, right? So,
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to get this thing out a lot quicker than most projects.
Right, and I think the point of it is having it to be a less expensive bomber, because bombers have just gotten more and more expensive. You think about the B-52, that thing was relatively inexpensive, right? Just a big old aircraft. You slap a bunch of engines on it, nothing special, right? Big payload capacity, and then it went to the B-1,
Yeah.
which was a supersonic fighter. That thing was
Right.
really expensive.
Right.
It was actually canceled, and then Reagan brought it back for the B-1B. And then the B-2, obviously, just it's extremely expensive. They only ended up building, 22 of them? Or 24? Something like that. They didn't
Right.
build very many of them, partly because the Cold War ended. And there was really no need for it.
Right.
The interesting thing with when we were talking with Tyler Rogaway, and this was another thing I learned, is that, and I have a model of the B-2 right now, I'm showing Eric for everyone who can't see this, but the sawtooth edge here was designed for low altitude penetration. So it was supposed to be able to sneak in enemy territory at very low altitudes. The difference with the B-21 is, I believe it's supposed to fly extremely high, like 80,000 feet or something ridiculous like that.
Right.
That makes it difficult to detect. You know, it's way up there. Supposed to be a high altitude bomber, pretty much.
Right.
And then with all the weapons it's going to be able to carry, different things, you know, it's not going to have a problem hitting targets from that altitude. So the next one we can talk about is the B-61.
Right.
This is what we were talking about before. You said you found something.
We got a little buffering going on.
Is
Sorry,
it
guys,
working?
if it's the internet's slowing down a little bit. We're still trying to get
The
everything set up.
the sound keeps going in and out. We have to figure this out. It could be my internet connection here. Unfortunately, AT&T hasn't seemed to live quite up to its reputation. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you said you read a quote from Tyler Rogaway, right? He had a quote about the B-61.
Right. Worth double the weight in gold. I mean, that's so ridiculous.
So
what's gold? I don't even know. Let me look up what gold is worth
I
right
think it's
now.
like 1,500 or something like that.
What
1,500 an ounce.
is gold worth? Let's see.
So basically, if you didn't hear that, they're saying that the B-61, this is going to be a nuclear gravity bomb. Just a bomb with a nuclear warhead on it. You know, nothing too special. Pretty much a Mark 84 with a nuclear warhead on it instead of a conventional. It's not a Mark 84. I should be clear about that. But they're saying that it's worth the cost of building this weapon is more than if you had the same weapon built in solid gold. More than double that, in fact.
Yeah, gold right now is it's bouncing
1,500?
around $1,500 an ounce. An ounce.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Damn it,
I gotta invest in gold.
man.
So the interesting thing to me, and I should really look into this, and I probably shouldn't be saying this live because, I'm supposed to know this stuff, but I'm really curious to know why you can't just slap, obviously there is some stuff to it. You want to make sure it's secure. You want to make sure it works every time. You want to make sure it doesn't fail. There's different things to it. But why can't you just slap a nuclear warhead on a Mark E4 and a JDAM? I mean, JDAMs are $50,000 each, and just do that instead of developing an entire new weapon for billions and billions of dollars. Because we'll get into it here, how much they're spending on it. But
I mean, I think from a submariner's perspective, testing and reliability means a lot, and the Navy's not going to just slap some shit together with some duct tape and drop it out of the back of an airplane because it could get sucked into the fucking propellers, or there's just so many variables at this point where we have the money, we have the resources, we have the people that want to do the research. Let's just let them. Let's not make mistakes. It's better at this point to not make that first mistake and just win on that first strike, where you make a mistake and all of a sudden it flies off into a field and it doesn't work. I think that's where America gets a lot of its forward projecting power, is the fact that we're so accurate and we're so on point. We're always there, and we're not going to just shoot a missile at you and it's going to fly off into a field and hit somebody else's house. No, it's going to hit your house.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
it's going to do it 99.9% of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if it's a nuclear weapon, you don't want that thing accidentally going off on your aircraft, right? If you're flying around with it.
Right, because if you just
perfect.
if you just duct tape a freaking tail fin to it and it starts flipping around, or I mean, those things are so on point where when they're dropping out of the aircraft, if the wing's sitting out of the sides too long, it could hit the side of the aircraft and spin, or it could get stuck in the mechanism. I mean, there's just so much you have to put into the research to just deliver the thing. I mean, because it's not just a guy throwing it out of the back of an airplane. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You have to develop a mechanism to deliver it. You have to design it into the aircraft. You have to design it into the submarine, whatever it is. There's more than just.
Yeah. Do you ever see that old video? I wish I could pull it up. If this wasn't live and I can put it into the YouTube video after I edit it, like the first aerial bombings ever. It's like a biplane, or one of those old wooden planes, and the guy's just leaning over the edge and dropping bombs
He's literally
off
just
the side.
throwing canisters out of the side.
Yeah. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
Where we become.
So to be clear, also this B-61 is they're doing two things with it. This on the 2020 weapons budget here is just about the tail kit. So they're doing two things. One is the tail kit. They're making a new tail for this weapon, so that it can be GPS guided, so it can be a precision guided weapon. The other thing they're doing is they're making the B-61 12 variant. Now the 12 variant is what is costing a lot of money. So I pull it up on Wikipedia here, which is not always the most accurate, but it's good to get a basic overview, right? Like if you don't know anything about something, it's a good place to start.
Right.
I mean, I think they were saying it was going to cost like $10 billion. Like the price just kept going up higher and higher. Let me see if I can find it here. Right, so as of 2013, the Pentagon was asking for an $11 billion life extension program for the B-61 bomb. So the life extension program, these weapons were originally built back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, and we're still using them today.
Right.
And obviously there's different things with components inside of it which would break down over time, or might not be reliable, or they're outdated, or they can't be configured with modern aircraft, things like that.
Right.
So they have to do these life extension programs, and we'll get to that actually with other weapons too. So originally they said it was going to cost only $4 billion. Then it went up to $8 billion, $10 billion, plus another $1 billion. So they're spending $1 billion supposedly on these guidance kits. And we see that, at least in here, that doesn't even seem to be the case, because just for the tail kit assembly, they're spending. So they're procuring 533 tail kits. One for each bomb.
Right. Yeah,
and
they said there's
100
about 500 of them, right?
Yeah. So I think that's the plan, to have 500 of these things. These things also, they're usually dropped from the B-2, the stealth bomber we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But also they said they're going to integrate it into the F-15, the Strike Eagle, the E version.
Right.
The F-16 as well. So that's kind of interesting.
I mean, we were joking about bunker buster nukes. I mean, it's like, yeah. I mean, your bunker is what? The size of your house, but I mean, it's going to take out the whole city. I mean, it's...
Yeah. Well, you got to get down into it, too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You got to get deep, right? And that's...
So let me see if I can pull up a couple pictures. It's a small picture, but... So you can see the shape of the weapon here. That front part here. This might be filled with... the way they used to do it was concrete or tungsten or something like that. A very strong material. So when it impacts the ground, it can kind of burrow into it. And then once it gets down, you have a delay fuse on there. So after a few seconds, it'll then detonate. So hopefully the goal is for it to burrow down through into a concrete bunker or an underground bunker and then detonate from the inside, or at least close enough to the inside of it where it's going to destroy and take out that entire bunker. The other interesting thing about this weapon, too, is we were talking about before we started, was that whole dial a yield thing, where they can actually control the yield of the weapon.
Right.
So this says here it's believed to be around 0.3 kilotons, which is nothing. I mean, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, they were around 20 kilotons.
Right.
So this is 0.3. Up to about 350 kilotons to 400 kilotons, somewhere around there, which is a pretty good sized bomb.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, any other interesting pictures? This is what we have to have a nuclear expert on soon. I think we're working on that.
Oh man,
we'll find somebody.
It's like finding a. Oh man, it's like finding
haystack.
Yeah.
And not only that, but how much are they allowed to talk about too?
Right. There's so many people. It's like submarines. It's like when I try to talk to people about submarines, they're so scared about talking about it. They've always been trained to not say anything. So
Right.
So like when I get online and I talk about it, I basically just walk myself like through a tour, right? So I'm touring somebody through the sub, right? But I'm not giving them anything crazy, And when it comes to nukes,
it's gotta be tough because almost everything is classified.
Well, yeah.
It's hard to really know what is classified and what's not classified. Even the smallest detail.
A lot of it comes down to numbers, pressures, all the specifics,
okay.
Right?
Like
timings. If you're an American citizen, I can walk you through the forward part of an American submarine because you paid for that thing, right? It's that whole forward part of the boat's not secret.
Yeah, I'm a taxpayer.
But there are secret parts of the forward part of the boat, right? So like when you walk into control, there are the depths, and it's going to show you the max. Well, we can't show you the max depth, so they cover it, right? So there's little things that they do to cover all that stuff, so you can't see it, but you're still allowed to experience that stuff. So same that and that's where it gets weird though, right? Because when it comes to nukes, nobody experiences that shit until 40 years down the line. Nobody takes a tour of a silo.
And even these pictures too. You look at these pictures, right? This is an old picture. I don't know. It doesn't have a date right on here, but this is an old picture.
Right.
All the different components. They show every little component on here. Just a little bit more detail of it. And also, it's obviously highly classified with nations like Iran and North Korea. They're worried about getting, just the smallest thing could help them out. If they don't know exactly how far to, levitate the plutonium core, right, above, so it has the right yield and everything. Because I know a lot of North Korean tests fizzled, something they call fizzling, which is not actually using all the nuclear material, and it's significantly weaker than a normal blast.
Right, and I think a lot of them, they had a re-entry problem. They kept burning up in re-entry.
We could talk about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about some re-entry. That's always a fun one.
I wonder if I could pull these up on here. I didn't set this up ahead of time, so
I think MERV re-entry is probably my favorite.
If I open it up, I can
aspect of nuclear weapons.
Did this work? Nice. Okay, so this was a tour that I went on of. Well, it's not a tour; it's just a museum.
It was a sex museum.
No. It was the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio.
Right.
So it was really incredible. They had full-scale missiles in there. And they also had, so this is a Minuteman I, the Mark V re-entry vehicle, before it was tested. So they have to have a ablative material on here so that when it re-enters back into the atmosphere, it absorbs the heat and it burns off and it burns away. So that way the interior of the warhead in there is not destroyed by all this heat and pressure.
Right. It's like the old astronauts used to have to deal with the heat shields.
Right. Same exact thing. Yep. So this is before, and then this is after. The exact same thing afterward. You can tell that things really got ripped apart and burned.
That's crazy.
And this is not easy to do. Ablative material needs to be extremely strong.
Yeah, you're not going to do that with a torch. I mean, that's high.
You have to have really good facilities to test this in. You almost have to do it. Even if you have good facilities to test this in, you're going to have to test it, actually fire it, and do a real end-to-end test.
Right.
And that's the thing you were talking about with North Korea. They're having trouble with the re-entry vehicle.
Right.
These things not only have to be able to withstand all that heat and pressure, but they have to be aerodynamic enough to maintain their angle of attack, like the direction they're flying in.
Right.
Because if it starts to tumble, the back of it might not be as strong, and then it's going to rip apart. And that's what is believed to happen with at least a couple of North Korea's tests.
Right.
And that was actually the problem. So if you remember, North Korea, their ICBMs they fired, they launched them straight up.
Right.
They went straight up. They went really high up there, and they came straight back down.
Right.
When you're coming straight back down, you're going through a less of a slice of the atmosphere.
Exactly.
Right. So the atmosphere is, say, this thick. If you're going straight down, you're going to get through that atmosphere quicker.
Right.
But if you're launching from for distance, you're going to be coming through at an angle. So you're going to be going through more of that atmosphere.
Yeah, you
it's
have to
be
have
more
the velocity.
pressure, more heat. Yeah.
Right.
So they really have to do a full scale end-to-end test. Right. Not saying that their weapon wouldn't work, but that is one thing that we have not seen yet.
Right. Yeah, that was the big test they had when it came to long-range nukes was, can it just re-enter? You can sit here and say your nuke works all day, which is fine.
Yeah.
But trying to throw that trash can 10,000 miles is a big difference, right?
Yeah, and it's a big difference even between something like their Nodong or like the shorter range missiles that can go maybe 1,000 kilometers or a little bit shorter than that. You're not going anywhere near that same speed.
No.
You might get up into the very edge of space and come back down into the atmosphere, but you're going at a much, much slower speed.
Right.
So you're not really doing the same. Just because you have like a Scud missile or a modified Scud, which is a lot of the North Korean weapons are modified Scuds.
Right. Right.
Or at least coming from there.
Right.
Doesn't mean you can do a full-scale ICBM. So back to ICBMs, we could talk a little bit about the Trident, the D5. This is, I know, one you like to talk about.
Oh, that good old SLBM. Yeah, man.
Yep.
I was never a ballistic missile submariner. I was always on fast attacks, but I did get to tour a few.
Oh,
yeah. One of the crazy stories I always heard was one of the missile techs told me, we got to test fire one of the missiles, and when we did, so when you go on the submarine, there are levels, there are decks, right? So it's almost like a hotel, right? So you have the upper, middle, and lower levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're deck plates, they're metal plates that you walk on. And so when you have a ballistic missile submarine, you basically have these tubes that are welded together on the plates that you walk on, right?
Right, yeah.
And so he was telling me that when you launch one of those things, you could see waves ripple through the deck plates as you're on watch, because there was just so much force coming out of that thing.
That would be pretty incredible to be on one when they're testing one.
Oh man, it was wild compared to like shooting Tomahawk. We were all excited. We're like, okay, we're gonna shoot a Tomahawk.
Did it launch?
It was like, boom.
It's over.
And it was over. Like,
yeah,
man, we didn't even like move or nothing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and they're huge too. I mean, it's that's the one thing about all this stuff is you read about it, you look at pictures and all that, but it's hard to get an idea of scale.
Right. And it's funny too because these are the shorter version.
Yeah, they have to be small enough to fit into. They have a wider diameter, I believe, to fit more fuel and get it to an intercontinental range.
Well, no, I don't necessarily think it's wider. I think it's just solid fuel. So they use a solid fuel instead of a liquid fuel.
They're all solid fuel though. You really don't want to do liquid fuel anymore. Liquid fuel, you can't store it.
Oh, okay.
Like you have to fuel up the missile beforehand, and that can take like an hour or 2 hours.
Right.
And if you're in a war, you don't want to wait an hour or 2 hours because then the enemy can get there and hit your thing. That was the thing actually with North Korea's weapons. A lot of them were liquid fueled, so that means if we ever went to war with them and they were about to launch them, they'd have to roll them out there. They'd have to start fueling them.
Right.
We'd have enough time to hit them and take them out before. But they're actually finally getting to the point where they can build solid fuel weapons.
Right.
Yeah,
they gotta cool the liquid fuel and stuff. Right. It's like
exactly,
a rocket. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. Fair enough.
So same thing. Exactly.
Right.
So the Trident D5. This is actually another life extension program. LEP.
Right.
That's what they're calling it. Again, these are all of the U.S.'s nuclear weapons are pretty old.
Yeah, they're all old.
From the 70s or the 80s, or
Right.
even some of them even before. Just we haven't built nuclear weapons since then. I think we had enough weapons in the 70s, the late 70s, and throughout the whole 80s. The Soviet Union was in a recession pretty much, more
Right.
or less. I mean, they didn't have a market, but it was in a period of stagnation.
Right.
So we really didn't have to build, at that point, we didn't have to build any new weapons.
Right.
We did, but we really didn't have to build too many new ones because we had enough to hold us through it. Soviet Union kind of started to stall out at that point. And then, 10 years later, they collapsed.
Right.
And we're kind of left with the weapons we had back in the 80s. So those weapons are starting to get past their, sell-by date,
Right.
so to say. So now they're going to have to do all these life extension programs. This life extension program, it's interesting. They say that ensures viability of a highly survivable strategic deterrent through 2042. It's not very long, like 23 years from now. So all this money we're spending, and actually we can scroll down and look at it here. $1.2 billion. 2020 alone. 2019 was 1.1 billion. Before that was almost 1.3 billion. Just to extend the life of these weapons, it's just incredible amounts of money.
Yeah, and it's
incredible amounts of money.
It's your ultimate deterrent. So if you're going to spend your ultimate amount of money on it, that's what you do, right?
Right.
And the other thing is, I think that number comes to technology. I think they're assuming that the technology is going to get even better. So let's invest the money to make it last 30 years, but not 60, right? Because we know that if we invest the money to make it 60, the technology could get better and we can fall behind. Because who knows what the future is going to hold for us, right? So let's just throw in 30 years because we can safely bet that nothing's going to... China is... who knows? They're the kind of random card at this point, the kind of wild card. But other than that, we don't have to worry too much about nukes at this point. And
as long as you have a deterrent, right?
And we have first and second strike deterrents, which are better than anybody else. So what does it even matter?
And the submarines are probably one of the best, right? If you think about it, the silos are fixed locations. The Russians know, or the Chinese know exactly where they all are.
Right.
Whereas a submarine, you don't know where it is, right? It could be anywhere.
Even the United States doesn't even know where they're at because they just say stay in a box. So nobody knows. So even nobody has that knowledge other than the boat, and they're obviously not going to pop up and say shoot me. Right. So they give you that ultimate second strike, which is that's where we could all go through MAD, right? Assured destruction, right? We could go through that. We could just destroy each other, but at the same time, what if one side has this special missile that we don't know about, or this special laser in space that could just take them all out, right? Because who knows? Who knows, right? So we still need that second strike, no matter what. That's going to sit right off your coast and just go. Yeah. It's not going to shoot from half across the world. It's going to go 300 miles and you're not going to have any defense whatsoever because it's literally sitting. When it comes to America, imagine a Russian SSBN sitting in the middle of the Gulf.
Yeah.
Just Houston, Florida, Mississippi, Atlanta. You have zero defense whatsoever. Was it the Coast Guard going to do anything? They're not going to they're not going to stop an SSBN, right? So you have to, yeah.
And the interesting thing, you're talking about a second strike, right? So after a nuclear war already happened, nearly, or possibly.
Right.
Are you talking about a first strike or second strike?
Well, second strike with the ballistic missile.
Second strike,
right.
Yeah. So after a nuclear war already happened, the interesting thing is, even if you were able to do a first strike say you were Russia and you were able to do a first strike on the U.S. You took out the U.S. and you won. Suppose, quote unquote won.
Right.
It's arguable whether you can ever actually win a nuclear war or what winning actually means. Even if you did, though, you caught the U.S. completely by surprise. You took out all their offensive capabilities, nuclear capabilities at least. These submarines could still be out there. And the interesting thing I think about is this second strike might not come right away. It can come like 2 weeks later.
Oh yeah, it won't. More than likely, you'll have maybe you'll have one ballistic missile submarine sitting off that coast, but we spread them across the world to cover the world, right? So you'd have to wait for those
to get orders
submarines
too,
to get over there.
They're deep in the water, right? They're submerged. And they might not get orders right away.
Yeah.
They're going to get orders a week later.
Right. They're going to do figure eights out there for however long they're supposed to until they pop up for a radio message.
Right.
And then the radio message may not come, and they're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, we need to figure out what's going on, and, who knows.
And then they can get the orders to strike, and then they would launch their weapons. So the Russia might be celebrating, we came out okay. Russia, Moscow is still alive. This is still alive.
Right.
And then these weapons could come in 2 weeks later, possibly.
Right.
Most likely won't be that long. But I always thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that was one of the
jokes. You
win
win the war, 2 weeks later, and you get nuked.
Well, that was one of the jokes I used to tell everybody was like, oh, well, like you're on one of the most dangerous platforms and one of the most dangerous things out there, right?
Yeah.
On a submarine. Well, sure, but if there's a nuclear war that happens, I'm going to be one of the only people left.
Yeah, right? I don't know if at that point...
We are so far out there, like there is zero chance you're going to get us. Especially if we're on mission in the middle of the fucking Pacific, transiting, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like the entire world, arguably South America is going to be pretty untouched because nobody really gives a shit about South America, right? And they're so far away from everything else that,
Yeah.
But
that's where you'd want to go.
Right, yeah.
If there was a nuclear war.
If you're really worried about nuclear war, you want to go to like the very southern tip of Argentina, where it's super cold near the poles. Like you want that nice fucking ranch out there.
Or even like Colombia or somewhere, maybe not Brazil, because I can see Brazil getting involved in. They're the most powerful nation in South America. They might get involved in some way.
Go to Chile, hide behind the mountains on that nice coast. I mean, just gorgeous place. But yeah, I mean, other than South America, yeah, I mean, I think that the submariners were going to last more than anybody. So it was a funny joke to be like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but would you even want to be?
I'm not going to burn to death.
Right. But can you imagine? So you survive the nuclear war, and then you come back to whatever port you can find, right? You dock somewhere.
Right.
I don't know. The world would be so much different than when you left port. That would you even want to go back to that? I mean, it would be. At least you're alive, I guess, right? But I can't imagine the world at that point.
Oh man, it's a good book. If you want to write a book, like what do you do?
Did you watch that? I think we talked. Sorry to cut you off. Oh, we talked about this before, right? The Last Ship. Did we talk about that?
Oh yeah, the show. Yeah. I mean, it's similar to that. It's like you're the last one. You're gonna run out of food eventually. What do you do, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're on a nuclear reactor, like a nuclear-powered submarine, well, that thing's going to go for 30 years, but it ain't going to feed anybody.
Right.
Like, they don't design them with hydroponic bays and, all this sustainable bullshit, Like, you're going to have to, like, run this thing on the port and eat rats, or whatever. So, you got to give up eventually, or what are you going to do? Just sit in the middle of the ocean and just surface and fish? I mean, I guess you could probably do that.
Right.
But where are you going to buy the tackle? Where are you going to buy...
What is it, the hydrolysis or whatever you use to electrocute the water to separate it into drinkable water?
Well,
or electricity and hydrogen?
Well,
oxygen, I'm sorry.
Yeah, electrolysis for oxygen.
Oxygen.
Right. I mean, you can sustain yourself for years as long as the machinery keeps running, which isn't going to happen, right? I mean, a lot of the electrolysis technology at this point is old. Nuclear weapons, for example, like this is our super punch, right? But it ain't been updated in 30 years.
Right.
I mean, submarines in a lot of the ways are the same way, right? We haven't been upgraded a lot, so,
And it's interesting, at least I think the U.S. kind of came to, well, maybe not with this, but for a while during the Cold War, it was like, all right, we need to build as many weapons as we possibly can. I think we got up to like 55,000 nuclear weapons at one point. I mean, it was insane. We had like 55,000. The Russians had like 50,000. They eventually surpassed us, but, it's just a absolutely ridiculous number of nuclear weapons. You would never need that many weapons. I think they did a lot of studies, and they showed the number of nuclear weapons you really need for a good deterrent, a decent deterrent, is like 150 or a couple hundred. That's about it.
I think that is based on per country, right? So maybe to Russia, but we still have to defend ourselves against whatever the fuck happens, right? I'm not saying
After
France,
the nuclear, after a war.
Well, just in general, I'm not saying France is going to attack us, but we still got to have weapons based on everybody, right?
Yeah.
The United States does not base itself on, oh man, you're
Deterrent
our favorite
Russia.
ally, No, like if you fucking decided tomorrow, we have a dedicated system for you, right? And I think a lot of that was based on we don't know what the fuck is going on at this point. Shit's gone crazy. It's just after World War II. Let's just get prepared for everybody. And then we started realizing, okay, the UK's probably not going to fucking attack us, right? So let's go ahead and knock those out. France isn't going to attack us. Let's go ahead and get rid of those, right? Spain's more than likely not going to do shit against us. Let's go ahead and get rid of those, right? And then you just have like a little variable system where, Spain starts fucking up. Well, yeah, okay, we got 12 ready for you. Well, okay. Well, maybe Portugal starts fucking up. Oh, we got 12 ready for you, right? You don't need 12 for everybody. You got 12 ready for an end case. So
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing is what is the future. So right now, an ICBM or an SLBM is almost impossible to stop, right? The U.S. is starting to develop some weapons like the GBI that can shoot down ICBMs, but even that is extremely iffy.
Yeah, they say it's not. They say it's 16 out of 16 or whatever, but
no, like in tests so far, and I know there's been upgrades after each failed test, but
maybe 16 out of 16 on one missile that they knew was coming.
Yeah, but the problem with that too is, so the U.S. has to build one of these GBIs for not every nuclear missile Russia or North Korea fires. They have to build one for each warhead.
Right.
Right. So if they have a Russian weapon, or even in the future a North Korean weapon that can carry 3 warheads,
right.
Well, that means you need to fire 3 of these interceptors, and it's more than that because I believe their plan right now is to fire 4 interceptors, so these GBI interceptors for each warhead. So if one North Korean missile can fire 3 warheads, that's 12 interceptors.
Right.
And right now I think there's only like 44 interceptors up there in Alaska. That's it. So if you're going to fire 4 at each one, that's only enough for 11 warheads.
Right.
And if you could
that's
fire
in Alaska.
3 on each one.
Like, what does that even mean? That's in Alaska.
Right. If they fire from another direction, like we're talking about the ballistic missile submarines, those can come from any direction.
Yeah, I mean, they can just park
the Gulf
right
of
off
Mexico.
right
or
outside
even
of
South
California.
America or anywhere. Yeah.
North Carolina. I mean,
you don't even have to get that close. You could go out to the South America, right? And they're not going to expect, you're not doing ASW patrols way out in South America.
Yeah, just hang out. Well, the Caribbean's a pretty good spot that you probably want to stay away from, just from testing aspects and stuff. But I mean, shit, you just hang out like in the middle of the Atlantic. I mean, I can't even tell you what SOSUS and IUSS and all these these monitoring stations are doing, but
that's really interesting to me.
That's what it really comes down to is intelligence, counterintelligence.
Yeah.
They could have these platforms and it really don't make a difference because we know exactly where it is the entire time. So
that's the fascinating part to me. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about secret U.S. weapons or different things like that, or different developing some spy plane or different things like that. But I think we don't know about that, so people are all just hypothesizing about that, right?
Right.
But in terms of SOSUS, I definitely think there is something going on there. Like, because SOSUS just died off, right?
No, I don't think it ever died off.
Well, officially, the actual SOSUS network kind of ended. And then they've kind of shifted over to using, NOAA? Like the different, am I wrong about that? What sensor? Aren't they using like other government, like civilian government agencies sensors as well to actually pick up, to listen for submarines?
Well, they're all American assets, right? So if you have a NOAA monitoring station in the middle of the Pacific listening for some kind of hurricane fart or whatever the fuck it's listening to, right?
Yeah.
If they say, hey, look, we think that there's a submarine that we think is in this area emitting this frequency, we think this sensor can pick it up. Did you hear anything?
Right.
Right. It's all American assets, right? So they're not necessarily putting NOAA assets out there to hear submarines, but it is possible that they could.
They could use it.
And it's all American assets. So
Right.
it's all just a network of information, right?
But if I believe in any secret government program, I bet there's something out there going on with submarines, to listen for submarines.
Oh yeah,
that we don't
totally.
know about.
That's the whole second strike, scenario is all based on not knowing where the submarine is. You can have that submarine, like North Korea has that SSB, the non-nuclear SSB SINPO, SINPO / secret thing that they have going on now. That could get somewhere, but what are the odds that it's going to make it out of South Korea, or out of the port, out of the port in North Korea, and South Korea is not going to pick it up, or like we have some kind of system that's just networked around that entire country that's just going to go, oh, here it is, here it's coming out, that was the argument about the USS Pueblo. I think we talked about it before, but
yeah, that was spy. The spy ship, the vessel that North Korea captured.
Right, and it was a research vessel, right? And so
that's what they.
Yeah, the whole thing was that maybe somebody paid them a shit ton of money to attack this thing to try to figure out what they're doing. Hint
like
Russia
China or something.
Hint Russia, and then they found out what they're doing because they captured the ship, and then they sold it back to Russia, and then North Korea now has a shit ton of money. They have a fucking huge ally because Russia didn't know dick about Celsius before USS Polo. They didn't know shit, and then all of a sudden they were just like, "Oh, we know exactly what's going on now."
Yeah, and there was what was the guy Richard Walker? There was somebody in the U.S. Navy, U.S. Naval Intelligence, I believe, who actually disclosed it to the Russians.
Oh yeah. A few spies, obviously.
And we know exactly where that SINPO is. I mean, I got it on the maps here. I mean, I could zoom in on it instantly and find it. There it is, sitting right there.
Right.
In port, in SINPO. The city is named SINPO, so that's what it's named after. And the interesting thing is this island down here, just off the coast. This is one of their largest naval bases. So if you zoom in, you'll find a bunch of their different submarines they got going on here.
Right. It would be interesting to see the tactic that they use to get that thing out of there. I mean, we would instantly see that thing disappear.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, you would. I would be willing to bet we would send a lot of Pacific assets to that area to figure out what the fuck happened with that thing.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's an SSB, so it's a conventional powered. I mean, that's probably the last thing you want, right? If you're talking about a ballistic missile submarine, you want that thing to be nuclear powered. You want it to be able to stay submerged forever, right? Indefinitely. You don't want it to have to surface to recharge its batteries or anything.
They have a different view of deterrence, I think. Whereas they're going to use this as a kamikaze missile. Yeah. They're just going to fucking fly this thing as fast as they can and just hopefully get that missile off. Whereas what we're doing is saying,
deterrence.
It's already here. Let's make a deal, right? I mean, because look, stop fucking around. We got a fucking missile submarine right here. Stop fucking around. Whereas they're going to be like, if you're going to attack us, we're going to just rush the thing out there and hopefully it makes it. And I think that at this point, we could deal with that. But imagine, I think we get really centristic when it comes to war. We think everybody's against us as Americans, right?
Yeah.
But they still got to deal with the UK. They still got to deal with France. They still got to deal with all these other countries that may not be able to deal with that, especially if they start fucking around with us, right? Where we're going to be like, well, fuck France. We're not going to give them any more assets because of whatever they're doing, right? There could always be that deal. This gives just even the fact that it could work gives them a level up. Because that thing's fucking scary, man. That thing is scary. Even if it's got one missile that probably isn't going to work.
Right.
That submarine's probably not going to make it. But what about that 2% chance that it does? It could take out fucking San Diego.
I mean, the scariest thing, too, is not even their ballistic missile submarines. I know we're shifting off a little bit, but they're missiles, right? They hide these things. They have just an absolutely insane number of underground bunkers. I mean, it's just absolutely insane how many of these bunkers they have. And these weapons or missiles or ICBMs or even the SRBMs or MRBMs, the medium-range ballistic missiles, could be hidden in any one of these underground bunkers. We don't even know where they are. It's doubtful that the U.S. intelligence really actually knows where they are, too.
Right.
Maybe they have some basic idea, but there's literally hundreds and hundreds of underground bunkers. Let's see if I can find one real quick. They're actually not too software is really making my computer go slower.
They have so much land too that they can just dig into whatever. It's all state owned, so they can do whatever they want with all of it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, oh, you got a house out here? We don't give a fuck. Get the fuck out of your house.
Yeah,
you
pretty
know?
much.
Whereas you're gonna have somebody in America go, oh well, this is my land, and no, you can't do this here, and eminent domain.
Here it is. Okay, I found this recently. Actually, I can't give credit to the person it was, but I saw somebody on Twitter recently talk about this. I don't know what it is. I wish I could give credit to. But look right here. You can see these, right? These are built into the side of a mountain here. These different bunkers. I believe he said that they're for helicopters.
Right.
I don't know if we know for sure. Something like this could be perfect for hiding a TEL, a transporter erector launcher,
right,
with a missile on the back, the big long truck with a missile.
Right.
Pull right out into this concrete pad, pull up to here, launch it, and then go back in there.
I would assume that they're getting a lot of this technology too from China. That's what they do.
Yeah, and then so really what I was going back to is I think it's gonna be interesting to see what happens in the next. It's not gonna be right away, and I'm not an optimist to think it'll happen in 20 years. I think maybe 30 or 40 years, when we finally develop defenses that are good enough to seriously stop ballistic missile attacks. So right now, there's really no way you're going to stop a ballistic missile. Like we were talking about. You have that GBI, that ground-based interceptor.
Right.
But you have to launch one for each warhead, and you're probably going to be firing 4 for each warhead. You can't match the number of missiles that Russia or China or even North Korea eventually can launch.
Right.
They can outspend us. Those weapons are so much cheaper than those interceptor missiles. Because those interceptor missiles has to be perfect. It has to hit that thing perfectly.
You're shooting a bullet with a bullet.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
Not only that, but you have to hit a certain point on that bullet with your bullet. It's extremely hard.
Right.
So in the future, though, I think it's inevitable that technology is going to progress, right? Whether it's laser weapons, direct energy weapons, microwave beams that can be sent out and burn through these, I think that's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I think laser weapons is where it is. That's what the Navy's investing all their money in.
So I think we're going to go right back to that time in the 1950s before ballistic missiles, where it's like it's possible to actually win a nuclear war almost, which is kind of scary actually.
Right.
Because if you can shoot down these missiles and you can win a nuclear war, then what happens? Are you going to go for it? At that point, if you can win, why not do it?
Yeah, that was the whole Star Wars thing, right?
Right.
We could could revert it all back, and realistically, if you could take laser technology and shoot hypersonic weapons out of the sky, like we're trying to do,
right?
It's possible you could take out a nuclear weapon. You could take out multiple warheads at the same time with just light.
Yeah.
And just a pod sitting somewhere, right?
Yeah.
There's I saw a guy that got arrested for shooting a laser at an airplane.
Oh yeah.
You
saw him?
Well, no, they were talking about it.
The news?
It happens all the time, right? This guy gets arrested for shooting a laser at an airplane.
Right,
He's sitting in his backyard, right?
How can you even point? So you see an airplane flying through the sky.
Yeah.
And you know how hard it is to keep a little handheld laser pointer steady.
How do you even see that? Like most airplanes are. The cockpit's up top.
Above, right, and the airplane's flying over you.
I think a lot of it comes from guys sitting at the airport and they're shooting airplanes
when they're taking off or landing or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
really
interesting.
fucking with them, but
yeah. Anyway, and so it's not just going to be the U.S. that has this technology either, right? Russia and absolutely China is going to be working on it too. So if China can stop our nuclear attacks, then what? Right? Then I think it's going to be a whole new world at that point.
Well,
there's no longer deterrence that we can rely on that we've been relying on since the 60s.
Well, it all comes to research at that point. Who is at the head of the research, right? At this point, it's always been, we've got 17 national labs that are coming up with the most amazing shit ever, right? And then the Russians and the Chinese just essentially steal it, right? The problem with that is, especially with the Russians and their state of how they deal with things, it's just not sustainable, right? You can sit there and steal shit all day, but eventually, if there's nothing to steal, you're behind.
And that's the thing. If once China, that's what I've always kind of thought of, and maybe this is a little bit of an Americo-centric view, if that's a word. China, they do, I think it's pretty well established that they do hack the U.S. and they do steal a lot of defense secrets from the U.S., right?
Right.
So if they're relying on a lot of that and not really designing their own from the ground up, you know, if that's what they're relying on, then they can really never pull ahead of us, right?
Never.
So
We're
in the future,
always ahead.
And that's the problem. Like when you actually want to go design and develop a whole new technology, I mean that's massive amounts of money you have to spend on that.
Yeah, we were just showing it.
Right.
How
exactly.
much money? $3 billion for a B-21?
Exactly. Yeah. It's insane. Yeah. So if they're gonna get to that point, I mean they're gonna have to be pouring in massive amounts of money, and yeah, I think they're gonna start to slow down in the amounts of technological achievement or advancement.
You got to have the labs. You got to have the people. You got to have the infrastructure of education. There's just so much involved in getting our 17 national labs just working at this point. You can't. You're just. We have that one step. That one step gives us that first strike if we need it. Because who knows? Because that gives us the ability. Like if you play chess, right? We get the first step. So we get to make the first choice on what happens, right? And if that first choice is the winning choice, there is no second choice. So that's why we've always had these labs in place to do this. And I mean, if you don't have the research, you don't have the development.
Oops,
you lose.
The audio would work. So even this though, so again, we were going back to talking about. I think Russia's really getting ahead of that curve. So I think ever since the U.S. pulled out of the ABM treaty, which is the anti-ballistic missile treaty,
right.
which was restrictions on research and development and deployment of weapons that can shoot down ballistic missiles.
Okay.
We pulled out of that in 2002, 2003. Bush pulled out of it. Ever since then, the U.S. has been working on different ballistic missile defenses. I mean, it doesn't seem like we've gotten very far. We have that GBI, but again, like we were saying, maybe 50% success rate. You're going to fire 4 at each one.
Right.
Ever since then, I think Russia kind of got scared, and that's why they're developing that nuclear-powered cruise missile, right? Status 6 or
Skyfall.
Poseidon, or
Or
there's a bunch of different names.
The missile.
I'm sorry,
the missile
torpedo.
Skyfall.
Torpedo, and then also the missile.
Right? The torpedoes, Poseidon.
Poseidon.
Right.
Yep. So then also, I just pulled up the video real quick. I can show this because I know it's released by the Russian government, which is under Creative Commons license 4.0 international. I've had to copy and paste that so many times.
Don't shut us down, YouTube.
So I think that's really why they're developing these things, because they really thought that the U.S. would develop weapons that can shoot down their ballistic missiles and they would be left completely defenseless, or completely out, right? The U.S. could strike them with ballistic missiles, and if they tried to retaliate back, U.S. would just be able to have some technology to shoot them down.
Right.
So that really disrupted MAD, like you were talking about, mutually assured destruction.
Right.
So that's really, I think, why they started developing that nuclear-powered cruise missile, and then this nuclear-powered torpedo, and then this nuclear-powered cruise missile.
Right.
Which you can see it flying low to the ground, under the radar horizon, so that way it can just creep up, but you're not going to see it until it's extremely close to the target.
Right. But nuclear powered. That's where it gets really weird because
fly forever.
Because we can launch Tomahawks, cruise missiles all day, but they're not nuclear powered. That's where the big fault has always been: is how do you make this super small weapon go so far without it just destroying itself? I think the United States gave up on it because we just never really saw the reason for it.
That's exactly
because we could
why.
just put a nuke on a regular cruise missile and it's going to get through, right?
Or a ballistic missile.
So we got SLBMs. Like we have just so many numbers, right?
Yeah.
We don't need this crazy ass. How do you even test that shit? You just gonna shoot it over the ocean? Like I mean, look what happened to them. It fucking failed. They picked it up. It blew up. It fucking destroyed the ship that was trying to get it out of the water. It's a fucking mess, right? Like we don't even want it. So
you're exactly right, because that's
it's
what
a
the
scare
US
weapon.
did with that. I don't know if you heard about that Project Pluto.
Oh yeah.
Back in the 60s, the U.S. was working on a nuclear-powered cruise missile. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, if you search, if you go on Imager and look up Project Pluto, I put together a whole photo project list of everything that happened with it, with a guy named Kasilik on Twitter, who's man, he's always been amazing and teaches me a lot about nuclear weapons.
Can I pull it up here, or is it gonna?
No.
Here it is, Kasilik.
Yeah. So there's so that's the the photo. I called it a photo project or something like that. But yeah, you can just scroll through and you can see all
the Troy
all the photos.
2A core.
Yeah, it actually failed. It actually a bracket broke when they were testing it.
Interesting.
And almost killed a guy.
Yeah, but basically I know the reason, pretty much more or less, there is a technological problem, but the reason more or less why we kind of gave up on it was because we had ICBMs. That right in the early 60s, that was when we were developing long-range, ballistic missiles. So there's no need to have a cruise missile, nuclear-powered cruise missile. We can do it with ICBMs, and there was no way Russia could defend against ICBMs back then, or Soviet Union.
And I've talked to guys in the Air Force that deal with nuclear weapons, and when I describe Project Pluto, a lot of them don't really know about it, but they're like, yeah, like, that's stupid.
Right. There's no need for it.
And these are guys that deal with stupid weapons all day. You know what I mean? Like, and they're like, what? That's just no, like, that's so over the top, because you could literally turn the missile into a dirty bomb. Like, there's just so much to it that just makes it so ridiculous.
And it's obviously clear, like you were just saying, Russia's having a lot of problems with it. I think it's pretty clear at this point that Russia is having a lot of problems with this nuclear-powered cruise missile.
Yeah.
It's been crashing. Supposedly, Russia says it was successful. Of course, we're going to say that. The U.S., a lot of people have been saying it's failed. And if you're pro-Russian, you can say, of course, the U.S. is going to say that. But from their video they released here, it's possible. So right here, this streak here, this cruise missile, this nuclear-powered cruise missile, likely has a rocket booster on the back.
It has to have a booster.
Right, so that gets it up in the air and up to speed. And
right.
then that nuclear engine is supposed to take over from there. Just exactly like the U.S. Tomahawk.
Just like a cruise missile.
Like anything else, yeah.
Right.
If it's launched from the ground, it's got to get up to that speed, pops out its air inlet, and then the jet engine takes over from there.
Right.
So they were saying that this nuclear, that it was only the booster that was working. So this image here
shows it in flight.
Right, in flight for only a short period of time. I mean,
with
if you
flame.
watch the video, right, and they were saying that most likely this missile, the nuclear-powered engine failed. So look at how quickly it switches over. I'm sorry for the lag here. My computer doesn't seem to like to do all this streaming at the same time. But it switches over pretty quickly to an animation, right?
Right.
Pretty quickly, it's right at an animation.
They did the same thing with the Poseidon.
They did, yeah.
Torpedo, where it was like, oh, here's this amazing torpedo. It's huge. It's amazing. But you'd never see any real anything. I mean, if you're going to use this thing as a terror weapon, you're going to show it off. If there's nothing to show off, then more than likely it's failed. And then we start getting news where, oh, they found the Skyfall missile and it blew up. These things aren't just... they're not fireworks. You know what I mean? You can't just lose one in a field and it's just another day. I mean, I hate to say it, but Russia's got that history of losing shit in fields. I mean, like, there's stories of them losing radioactive material in fields, and guys are walking up and they're hunters and they don't know what to do. They're getting ready to die because they're freezing in the field, and they find this hot rock and they curl up next to it, and it's a radioactive base, or whatever. It's just...
That's the interesting thing, too. They were much more secretive about what they were doing, right?
Yeah.
Especially during the Cold War.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of what the U.S. calls broken arrows. There's probably a lot of stories there that we'll just never know. I mean, they covered it up. They wanted to keep it secret, which is understandable. I mean, the U.S. tried to cover up a few of them, too, that we didn't learn about until later on.
And the great thing about the United States, though, is I'm not trying to, like, blow up, toot our own horn, but we will eventually be like, yes, we lost this. We're not going to just hide it for forever.
A Freedom of Information Act or something. Eventually, right. Yeah, you'll get to. Can't see the video. Oh, status 6. I call it status 6. Oops. So you could probably tell me, when we had on H.I. Sutton, he was telling us that, I guess I'm even getting confused. So what weapon is this showing? Is this Poseidon? So this is the video they released. I was under the assumption that this was the Poseidon. Mute the sound here. So they get how the researchers working on it. Here it is. You can see it being pulled out by a train. That's a massive warhead. So this is supposedly supposed to be that because I believe this was Poseidon, and someone was telling me that I was wrong on this.
Okay, so this is actually the, and Sutton was giving me shit about the name, but I call it the Harpsichord. The Harpsichord is the English name. Okay. This is their drone version, where the Poseidon is that one right there. So they just show that right there is supposedly the Poseidon.
Okay, so that's why, because they're switching back and forth so quickly.
Yeah, I think they're double using images.
Okay.
Because the Harpsichord is supposedly going to be, from what I understand, the slow, short-range version where they could just kind of creep it right into a port and blow it up.
Or something, yeah.
Where the Poseidon, the status 6, is going to be like, we're going to shoot this thing from
60 knots or something.
From the North Pole, and it's going to go all the way to South America and take out Argentina, right? I mean, it could go, I think it's like some crazy shit. It's a nuclear-powered torpedo,
it can go pretty much forever. More or less forever.
The only nuclear-powered torpedo that I know of. And it's fucking enormous. It looks like its own submarine. It's 8 meters high by 22 meters long or something like that. It is enormous.
It's just really interesting how they show. I mean, is this the Belgrade? I don't even know enough by sight.
I mean, who knows?
It looks like
it. It should be.
So they have a drone that comes out of the back, and that drone doesn't hold Poseidon, right?
No, Poseidon is going to be externally mounted.
Okay.
Yeah. It won't be internally mounted.
So they're just showing a drone, and then they're suddenly switching over to Poseidon.
Yeah, they show 2 different graphics.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's
stupid. They show a drone launch, and then they show Poseidon.
Right. Yeah, because if you look at the Harpsichord, God, I can't even tell you what the actual name is. It's yellow. It looks like an actual drone. Right. And you can actually see images of the Harpsichord because it has 4 props. And they all angle in.
It does here. In fact, you can see it if this doesn't.
Where if you go to the next graphic, you'll see 1 prop, and it'll be the Poseidon weapon.
I mean, it's definitely a very it's an interesting weapon to try to get around. Like I was saying, I think they really started developing these things to get around the U.S. ballistic missile defense system. So in the future, as these weapons become more reliable or new technology comes out to use lasers or direct energy of any form to shoot down these intercontinental ballistic missiles, I think Russia was getting ahead of the game trying to develop weapons that can get around, right? You're not going to be able to use a laser to shoot down Poseidon.
Right.
Or a nuclear-powered cruise missile that's going to fly, hugging the ground, and you don't have time to shoot at it until 10 seconds before it's, when it's close enough over the horizon to you.
Right.
I think that's going to be a very interesting time. And I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I think it's going to be probably at least 30, 40 years out.
Well,
but it's going to happen.
We've always teased it. It's always been... If you're going to shoot a nuke at us, we're just going to shoot a nuke at your nuke and take out your nuke by nuking
that was the original. Yeah. That was the original way of doing it.
Right.
Yeah. So even the U.S. had a program, Skyguard or Safeguard. I can pull it up really quick here. So both countries had.
They had it with nuclear torpedoes. That was kind of the whole deal. Like if you're gonna shoot a torpedo at us, we'll shoot a torpedo back, take everything out.
Yeah. So there was. I remember the Sprint missile. So this was part of. Let's see if they have it. A Sentinel program. Okay, so I guess I'm wrong. It was Sentinel program. So the Sentinel program was going to be... So basically, a little bit of background here. The ABM Treaty restricted the amount of research and deployment of anti-ballistic missile systems. Both nations, I believe, I could be wrong, they both could build one, or maybe it was 2. They can defend their capital city and defend their ICBM field, where they had all their ICBM missiles. The U.S. decided to defend their ICBM field. Russia decided to defend Moscow. They had that famous the A-35. The U.S. began work on the Sentinel program. They had the Sprint missile and the Spartan missile. The Spartan missile was for longer range. Sprint was closer, short range, to shoot down these missiles. And like Eric was saying, they had a nuclear warhead on board, each one. So what it would basically do is get up into the general vicinity of the incoming Russian weapons, detonate their warhead, and just hopefully that nuclear blast that happens takes out the incoming warheads. And that's what Russia still has today, the A-135. They're working on the A-235. I can actually pull it up here. A-135. Anti-ballistic missile. Here we go. So this is what they had here, or they actually still have today. And these things, like you were saying, they have a nuclear warhead on board. They would launch up into the air, detonate, and they would take out anything nearby.
Right.
It's not very smart to detonate a nuclear warhead above your city, but if you're about to be hit by a much larger U.S. warhead, you might as well do that, right?
Right.
If it's a nuclear war, I mean, almost anything goes at that point.
Right. If you were to shoot a nuke in the air, there's not a whole lot to ionize, so you're not going to have a lot of fallout.
Right. True.
So you don't have to really worry about a whole lot of, especially because if you could shoot it far enough over the ocean or over country, Russia's all country, right? So you can always knock them out that way. So, but I think what's really funny about those nuclear weapons is that they always sell them as these over the top, like we're gonna shoot this thing and it's gonna cause this super tsunami. Like they always play this almost Hollywood theme of destruction. It's not gonna be just a nuke blowing up because that's kind of boring. We've heard that all the time. But no, it's gonna be a giant tsunami that's gonna take out everything from Virginia to Florida.
Yeah. And that's I mean, it's so unfortunate we lost that episode from H.I. Sutton.
No,
that was the one we talked about.
Man.
And I remember talking about it. We talked about going into all the rumors and everything about Poseidon.
Yeah.
We talked about that tsunami they say would happen.
It's one of the sad parts of trying to do this podcast is we've had some troubles, and we have a lost episode with H.I. Sutton. If you don't know, Covert Shores is one of the greatest submarine researchers on the internet right now.
Absolutely.
He's fucking fantastic. I love that dude. And
look into his book, really.
Yeah. The recognition guide is fantastic, and he's big on narco subs, big on diving. The special diver vehicles and
anything really,
top to bottom, he's fantastic.
The DSRVs and stuff like that, even Iranian ones. I mean, this is a German one here.
He makes his own art on freaking paint.
Well, to be fair, it was 3D
paint.
Right?
I mean, but it's
which
not.
I guess is better.
Yeah, it's not 2002 paint. It's 2009 paint.
I didn't even see this article yet. He's got a Chinese LDUUV, which is a large displacement unmanned underwater vehicle. China's working on.
Yeah, so this picture is from, they're getting ready to do a military parade.
Yeah,
and they were showing all the vehicles driving through. But yeah, that thing's wrapped up like a present, and it definitely looks like it's going to be something underwater. It doesn't look like a bomb. I mean, I guess it could be like some kind of MOAB or something, but it definitely looks like it's going to be some type of large underwater
There's been
autonomous vehicle.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd highly recommend. It's just HI Sutton, SUTTON.com. Definitely go on there and look at the different things. He doesn't even have any ads showing up.
No,
he does all this I mean, he writes a book and releases a book. That's probably one of the few ways he makes money. He probably has different deals he works on.
Yeah, he's got
people.
this old website from 1990, and
exactly.
It's great, man. It's perfect.
It is perfect. Yeah, so much information. I mean, probably the best information you're going to get from any open source person.
Yeah.
That you're not going to have to pay an absurd amount of money like Jane's or something.
Never, yeah. It's great.
But this parade that they have planned on the 70th anniversary, that's what it is, of the People's Republic of China. I actually just showed a picture of my recent video here. This is interesting. Maybe we could talk about this a little bit. So I've heard several different stories. We really don't know what this is. And this is the same camouflage, right, they're using on this LDUUV.
Is that what it is, camouflage?
Yeah, it's some sort of netting surrounding it, covering it up. So they believe that this here, because I've seen a whole bunch of pictures from this parade, everything is covered in the same camouflage.
So wait, is that to hide it driving through the city?
Yeah.
From satellites?
Yep. Yeah, from anything, from any people watching.
Oh, from just anything. Where it came from.
Right. But you can see the basic shape of it, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, okay.
So this is supposedly a hypersonic drone that they're working on.
It looks like it.
And I think I have another picture here.
It looks like something hypersonic. You can tell by the shape of the wings.
Right, it just looks extremely...
And it has no cockpit.
It looks very fast. Oh, here we go.
I mean, it could be a missile. It could be anything.
Show this picture.
There's a weird blur. There's a weird blurry line between drones and unmanned vehicles and even manned vehicles. I mean, it's fucking.
Yeah, and you have to have a cockpit. And you have to have it up high enough where you can see stuff.
Right.
So yeah, here's a satellite image.
Yeah, you ought to show the picture of you sitting in that F-16 cockpit and just show you like what it looks like as a person sitting in a cockpit. I mean, it ain't comfortable.
No, and it was really interesting. Like I was saying before we started this, when we had on the Fighter Pilot podcast guy.
Yeah.
It was funny because he was saying he flew in an F-16 for a little bit toward the end of his career, and it's really reclined. I mean, you're sitting way, way back, and yeah, I got to sit in an F-16 cockpit at a museum. And yeah, you are extremely reclined. It's interesting. You have an interesting view because you can see way up because you're so reclined. But he said it was challenging going from an FA-18 to an F-16.
Right.
But anyway, here's another satellite image of that hypersonic. It's real pixelated. It's not very high resolution. Here's a couple drones they have. This is similar to the Predator drone here.
Right.
And then
so it's small. You can see the trucks. You can see the trucks lined up in the grass.
Here, yep.
So you can give it a little
so
size.
So it is, yeah.
So these are all drones.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they do this on purpose too.
Yeah, obviously.
I mean, they realize that U.S. satellites are flying overhead.
Yeah, for sure.
In today's world, you know that there's always going to be some sort of satellite overhead. So anything you put out there,
Deterrence doesn't work. It doesn't work unless you show your dick off. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to show it off for it to work.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a whole new world, as I've said before.
And they may not work. They could be fucking.
Exactly.
They could be blow up fucking balloons.
Yeah, balloons. Yeah, like the fake. I actually have a picture. Maybe I can put it up here.
How often did we do that in World War II? Where we
with the tanks and everything. Yeah.
Ace Combat 7 is all about the base is covered in blown up balloons, and they're just these rogue pilots. You know, I
think I have to get that game. I think I'll have to buy it.
It's good. It's good.
It's usually something that you can carry 50 missiles in might turn me off.
Oh man, that's what makes it fun.
So anyway, yeah. I mean, have you seen this picture before? So this is an S-300.
Oh, look at that.
But it's just in a big balloon, pretty more or less, right? It's a big inflatable S-300, but from space or from a reconnaissance aircraft, yeah, you're not going to know the difference.
Never tell.
I mean, they have infrared cameras, right? That can look at it in infrared.
Right.
But they also have heat sources that can make it have the same signature as an S-300 would have.
Right. They'll put a little heater under where the engine would be.
It's more complicated, but yeah, basically, yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the interesting thing. You can't really hide much anymore because there's so many satellites that can fly overhead, and they're flying overhead every single day.
Which is interesting too, because as an admiral, and I need to strike this position, I need to see that this thing is not a fucking blow up doll, right? So I need a satellite now that's going to go up there and differentiate between plastic and an actual metal cage, right? So now we need to have this new, weird, secret system to deal with the fact that I need to not know it's a blow up doll, and I'm not going to spend $1 million shooting a tomahawk at it.
Exactly. And I mean, you could even build it doesn't have to be an inflatable thing either. You can go out there and build a metal wireframe, aircraft.
That's true.
Anyway,
just put a shell out there.
Yeah, so let me get back to what we're doing. We're talking about H.I. Sutton.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else? We had a few more things to pull up here. So we talked about the Trident a little bit. What was the next thing we had? Oh, okay. So, like we were talking about earlier, right? A lot of the U.S. nuclear weapons are old.
Right.
Real old. Like the the Minuteman III was built back in the 70s.
Right.
I mean, it's old. It's like 40, 50 years old now.
Right.
So they are finally now working on a new ICBM. And this is what they're working on here. The Ground-Based Strategic Deterrent is just the basic name. I mean, hopefully they get a better name for it in the future.
I mean, it's a perfect,
Minuteman, Peacekeeper, different stuff like that.
Yeah, it'll be something like that.
I don't want to be saying, GBSD every single time I talk about it in the video. So they're building a new one. The interesting thing that, at least, I mean, maybe they're keeping it extremely classified, extremely secret. But from everything I've read, right now, the U.S. does seem to be kind of lagging behind Russia and even China where Russia and China, their ICBMs, they're able to use reentry vehicles that can maneuver to some extent.
Right.
They can actually barely shift back and forth to make them harder to target by ABM systems, anti-ballistic missile systems.
Right.
And not only that, but they also have a whole bunch of decoy systems. So they have big decoys. So again, going back to that GBI, the ground-based interceptor, you have to fire 4 at each warhead. Well, you might be firing at a decoy, right? So you waste 4 of, and you only have 40. We only have like 44 of them right now.
Right.
So you're wasting 4 on a possibly be a decoy.
Right.
That's one thing I haven't. Everything I've read, I haven't found that the U.S. is continuing to do that. They did do a lot of research on that in the past. Different hypersonic maneuverable reentry vehicles. Maybe they do have something like that, but I have not found any evidence of that so far. And I can even pull up a few pictures here.
It's an interesting topic where we assume that research stops because of a treaty or whatever. But behind the scenes, when we all know that if this motherfucker's going to walk up to you and punch you in the face and you need some type of deterrent, are you really going to stop trying to figure out what that deterrent is? You know, it's...
Yeah.
I mean...
But basically, you get to a system where you have something that works. So why change it, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Go back to that old adage.
And it's... America's based on economy, right? That's how we won the Cold War. Essentially, we won because of attrition. You know, we basically burned the Soviet Union out because they couldn't afford their multiple systems, arguably their submarine infrastructure, and they fucking burn out.
I found after searching real deep into this, I did find some interesting images and shapes. I mean, nothing that has been... So it's going to look something like this. So this basic shape here you see is a shape of a... And so this is not quite it, but it's something that a reentry vehicle, like we're talking about, that can maneuver, that can change course in flight to make targeting it extremely much more difficult. Now there were some patents I think that were. This is the base shape here you see, but it's obviously extremely classified. But there were some patents that were filed, and there was a basic shape of it. The U.S. likely did put a lot of research into it. But like I'm saying, I just don't know how much they actually did or they thought was just not worth it because basically at this point, oh, look, it's my video. Submarines matter. I'll have to look into that later.
Oh, man.
Find out why they use my thumbnail.
That's a good video. You should watch that one. Nukes at this point are darts. And they've always been darts.
True.
They're lawn darts. They're just super long darts. You're going to throw this thing and it's going to land at the spot that you pretty much predetermined it in. You got second stage, you got third stage that will kind of guide it in, but once that thing is on its final fall, I mean, it's just a dart. It's just a metal rod. So it's interesting to see that you can not turn it into a reentry vehicle, right? Because right now we have reentry vehicles where it's just like a pod that slowly falls in, kind of spins out. It's like a super expensive firework, right? That could be, or it could be decoys, it could be whatever. It's just a pod with a bunch of cones on the front of it. It just kind of does what it's supposed to. Right? But it still has to hit that area, and I mean, it could be. I mean, with reentry, you can't. It's just so fast. Like, why? Like, if you're coming in so fast, how far are you going to actually maneuver in that last half second?
I think it's
a meter.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a fucking nuke, right? I mean, you may hit that street corner, but you're gonna take out the whole city.
Right. I think it's mostly the whole profile picture here.
Yeah.
This background image here is just. I mean, this is different. Each individual warhead reentry vehicle coming in and then striking in the ground. in the event of a real war, they would detonate higher up. So they would detonate, a few thousand feet up in the air to maximize the effect of the blast.
Right.
So it's not being absorbed into the ground or anything.
Right. Now you could actually do ground-based strikes if you want fallout.
You could,
if you want
right.
long-term
A much
damage.
more dirty bomb if you're actually, making the ground more radioactive and all the debris that flies up.
Right.
But you were telling me a funny little edge, like I was saying, that if you see these streaks going through the sky, then you're probably fine, right? But if you see a little speck in the sky and it's not going to the left and not going to the right, that's the last thing you'll ever see. Huh?
It's done. You see
it's coming right at you.
Yeah, it's because of all you see. Yeah. There's a bunch of guys that do testing out the Kwajalein Atoll, and they talk about how, those little streak cones, they're just shooting from thousands of miles away.
Yeah, it's usually like 4,000 miles. I believe it's around 4,500 miles from California to the Kwajalein Atoll.
Right.
Yeah, so they can fire longer ranges, but that's where they have all the testing and all the cameras set up and everything to record, to see how accurate they are, to do extremely slow motion with high speed cameras to really watch them impact the ground.
Right. Share a little missile porn.
Yeah, we got to see if maybe we can get someone to allow us out there during a test.
Oh, man, there's no way.
Again,
Kwajalein Atoll is like 20 hours to get out there.
Yeah,
it's a fucking mess.
Oh, yeah, it's out way out.
It takes weeks to get out.
Way out in the South Pacific there, out in the middle of nowhere.
I'd totally do it, though.
I would, too, yeah. It'd be worth it, even if it costs me money. I might do it.
I'd totally do it.
So the next one here, I have the LRSO. This one is something I've been extremely interested in. I asked Tyler Rogaway about it a little bit. So this is the new nuclear warhead cruise missile they're developing.
Right.
So right now they have a weapon called the air launch cruise missile. I can pull up a picture of the. Should do that. I was watching Star Trek. AGM-86. This is the weapon they use right now. They've been using it for a long time. Right here. The AGM-86.
Right.
There's a nuclear warhead on the front. It's got some fuel. It's got the air intake here and a basic jet engine.
Looks like a cruise
missile. More or less, it's a cruise missile. Yeah, nothing special about it for the most part.
You can always tell it's air launched because it's flat on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Submarine launched, everything. Tomahawks, ship launched are always round. Yeah.
Huh. So basically, this thing is old. This thing, when they first designed it, was only supposed to last like 10 or 20 years. And they're planning on building a new one, a follow-on weapon in the future. And what they're now working on is the LRSO. And this has been like 50 years later, 40 years later. It actually does. It says it right in here. 1982, well past its original 10-year design service life. So it's again just another one, but the amount of money they're spending on this thing is just absolutely insane. $712.5 million for 2020. The year before, 2019, $665 million. Before that, $437.5 million.
I mean, long-range standoff is the whole definition of deterrence, right?
Yeah.
You could punch me, but I could punch you from a lot farther back.
But the interesting thing is it's more or less just a basic air-launched cruise missile. Again, going back to what I was talking about, the B-61. It's just a basic bomb. It's just a basic cruise missile. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason. Maybe I haven't read enough to know what that reason is. Besides, beyond reliability, beyond safety, and all these other things, that they have to reinvent the entire wheel to develop a brand new cruise missile when it seems more or less they can just throw it on a JASM, right? So let's see if I can pull up a JASM
and
here.
that's where it gets really funny. They could throw it on a nuclear reactor, and they could make that thing fly from Los Angeles if they really wanted to.
Right.
But I think at this point they have to find this weird balance where we have to meet these treaties and this treaty and this treaty and this treaty and these fucking 400 treaties we're mixing up with. And this is what we get. I mean, you're talking about the smartest people on the fucking planet. I mean, I hate to say it. I'm not trying to blow up our own country and all those things, but we have billions of dollars in assets of research, and they're not doing this shit for no reason. You know what I mean? I mean, there's always a reason. Trust me.
Well, Possibly, but at the same time, I mean, it's if you're just gonna slap a nuclear warhead on a JASM, your company doesn't get much money, right? If you can convince them that we need to create something that's much more, a brand new thing, reinvent the wheel. You can get several. I think they're gonna spend like $5 billion on this LRSO instead of slapping it on a JASM, which you can see here. I mean, this year they're spending $78.5 million.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a lot of money, but that's really not much. I mean, they're purchasing 411 of them, plus the OCO budget of 19 of them. I mean, those are pretty cheap, right? Compared to how much? I mean, they're a couple $1 million each.
So I think what's really interesting about nukes, right? So we talk about people who want to get rid of nukes, right?
Yeah.
We know that shit's not going to happen.
No,
you can sit
no
here
way.
and argue all day. It's just never going to happen. The only reason you're going to get rid of nukes is because something better is going to come out, right? So what do you think is going to be that technology that actually obsoletes nukes?
I don't know. I mean, direct energy is maybe the only one, right? If you can.
Well, but those are still
maybe
nukes. You're shooting nukes out of the sky, right? Like,
no, even as an offensive weapon.
no, I'm
From
talking
satellites.
Well, but I'm talking about an offensive weapon you don't have to shoot, right? Like, just in general, like, let's say AI.
If you're gonna talk about cyber warfare and stuff like that,
I'm just talking about, yeah, I mean, in the future in general, right?
Right.
Just, yeah, like you look at Boston Dynamics. Have you seen that fucking video of that robot they have now where it's doing front flips and shit?
it's scary.
God.
It's kind of scary, yeah.
I actually tweeted out a video of I found online where it's Boston Dynamics in 2009, and this robot's like slipping and it's barely standing up.
Yeah.
And then obviously you see this robot do a front flip, a back flip. It does the whole. It looks like it's getting ready to go to the Olympics. It does the whole fucking arms out and shit. It's great, man. I think, in my opinion, the only reason you're going to get rid of nukes is because you're going to develop a new technology that's going to be even more precise and dangerous.
And even then, that's going to be so far away, I think. You see these Boston Dynamics ones, but have you noticed the long umbilical cord they have? Because it's for power. So the hardest thing about these robots is sustaining enough, or having enough power on board.
But
you
that's
can only have so much on a battery.
Right, but that's all we're dedicating our fucking energy infrastructure into right now is battery operation. Nobody gives a shit about nuclear. It's barely changing at this point.
Right.
Nobody gives a shit about fucking hydrogen, anything like that. It's all about battery operation, So, I mean, it may not go that far, but let's say 40 years from now, you can have a robot that can just run onto the coast and just wipe out a city. You know what I mean? It's not going to be a nuke. It's going to be fucking crazy-ass robot dogs that are going to walk through the streets and just murder everybody.
Those are kind of scary, right? When
It's mass
when
destruction.
they're kicking them and stuff, and they're like stumbling, and it looks extremely organic. And
I mean, it's still mass destruction, but it's calculated mass destruction. You're not wiping out a city. You're not destroying the entire infrastructure. You could literally just kill everybody, walk in and take over the infrastructure.
Yeah.
At this point, we can't do that. If you're going to nuke somebody, it's just everybody's going to die. The whole world's going to die. Everybody's dead. Fucking the human race is done.
Yeah.
But 100 years from now, it could be the human race is done, but the world is still intact because we didn't want to destroy the world. We wanted to fucking kill everybody in Russia. We didn't want to kill the dogs. We didn't want to kill the deer.
Well, that's the interesting thing I think about warfare. When you look back throughout the centuries, originally it was you want to take out the enemy, right? And you kind of want to do that with the minimal amount of collateral damage. You've always wanted to do that.
Right.
Because if you're going to conquer a country, you want to take over the land. You don't want to have everything destroyed.
You want to take over the power, not
so
the
you
people.
want to take the exactly.
Right.
So originally it had to be you had to take out the entire army of the people, the king and everything, right? And it's gradually, I think, gotten to the point where you have more and more technology, whether it's drones. If drones are going to become, obviously are going to become much more prevalent in the future. It could get to a point where there's going to be a future war could be very, very few people actually die.
Yeah.
It's just going to be, you're going to outspend the other person. You're going to destroy enough of their drones, and they're going to try to destroy your drones, and it's going to get to a point where almost no one will die.
It's 100% attrition.
But
right?
it's just, yeah, exactly.
All attrition.
Yeah.
It's all just machines killing machines. It's not people. Because when you have people killing people, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
It just, if you don't fucking do what we say, we're gonna kill you. It could be any aspect of life, right? The police, it could be military, it could be anything. If you don't do what we say, it's gonna end in the way we want it to.
Yeah.
Where now you have robots that are gonna go, not even, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when they had a shooter in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
They rode a drone in there and blew the fucking drone up and killed the guy.
That was incredible. And now I live here.
Yeah, I mean, they literally fucking rode a drone in there with a fucking explosive on it and killed the guy.
And he was just up on the top of a parking garage right town.
Yeah. I mean, he was an obvious threat and he was killing people, but...
Right. It was mostly police officers, but still.
I mean, it wasn't some dramatic shit where they flew in this fucking AUV and it flew into the middle of the fucking parking lot. Boom! It was just like this little slow robot, like you see in the 80s with the fucking...
Right. The little tracked wheels and stuff. Yeah, it's like... Yeah.
Yeah, it fucking... Oh, yeah, I'm just a robot. Please fucking help. Boom! Fucking kill that guy,
It's incredible. Have you heard about, and it's a little off topic, but the Joker, the movie that's coming out?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, so ever since I moved here, I downloaded the local news app, on my phone.
Right.
And they're saying that the U.S. military, actually, has been warning against incel. I don't know if I could say that. Get demonetized. You know what incel is?
Incel?
I barely knew this either. I bet a lot of people watching this know what it is.
Never heard of it.
Involuntarily celibate. So you know what celibate is, right?
Like not having sex?
Right, involuntarily. Means you can't get it. So it's not your choice. So people, nerds,
Okay.
nerds and stuff who can't find
I'm so confused.
So nerds who can't get a girlfriend, that type of thing.
So what are they doing?
They're warning against violence from these people. They're gonna try to recreate the Joker in real life. Because remember the Dark Knight?
Right.
Yeah, there was a shooting, right? I forget the exact details, but there was a shooting at a. I think it was at a. Oh man, I'm getting confused with the details. But there was people who were trying to reenact the Dark Knight.
Right.
They're like, we're fighting against the establishment, and they were going out and shooting people.
Right.
So anyway, the U.S. military was actually warning against this violence from these people because of the movie The Joker. I want to see that movie, but I don't know if I want to go to a theater now.
You know where that probably stems from is from China's one-child law. Like they have this big issue where they were, you only have one child.
Right.
Well, if you're gonna have a child, you're gonna have a boy because the boy is
more valuable.
Right. So there was a
in
lot
their
of
culture.
There was a lot of daughters that were killed off, like
Yeah.
millions and millions of daughters that were killed off, and there's a lot of guys that are out in the fields in the country that don't have
a wife or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's no women anywhere, And so, I mean, I could tell you from a personal aspect, being on a metal tube with a bunch of dudes for months, it's not a fun place to be for a long time. You gotta eventually hang out with girls.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about guys that live in fields that just don't have anything, so they're starting to like incite violence. They're starting to get really, I'm a dude. If I don't get laid in a year, I start to feel really fucking weird, right?
Start to get that itch, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're living out in the country and you don't know what that itch even means, because you've never seen a woman, I mean, shit gets weird. So there's a lot. You're seeing that worldwide.
So that's the thing, yeah. These people are focusing their energy on other things, possibly violence. They think, maybe they can change the world or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, that's kind of a sidebar there. The other thing we wanted to talk about, I can switch the video over to this one, is... Oops, I have to click on this live screen. The Columbia class.
Yeah.
I know you're a submarine man, and I don't know if we should say it, but we have a guest coming up next week who is a submarine expert, or a buff. He was a submariner, like you.
Yeah, he's a submariner. Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Sonar
can't say
tech.
the name yet.
Yeah, sonar tech's gonna be fun.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a
looking
mechanic.
forward to that.
I'm a mechanic, so it's gonna be nice to have a weapons guy on there. So.
Yeah, sonar is always the most interesting thing. I'm gonna have a lot of questions for this person, but anyway, so the Columbia class. This goes along with the nuclear weapons theme of this podcast. Columbia class is going to be the new ballistic missile submarine that the U.S. is building to replace the Ohio class ballistic missile submarine. So those things are getting old. I mean, they're developed back in the 80s, I believe. Right. Just like most of the U.S. nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons platforms.
Right. And they're weirdly modified, too. So you got the Ohio class, which has 20 tubes, but only 16 of them are operable because of the START treaty. So you got 4 lockout tubes on a submarine that's never going to use lockout tubes.
Yeah.
So you got a bunch of wasted space and wasted technology.
And not only that, but I think they're limited to how many warheads each one can carry.
Right.
So the interesting thing I saw in here is they're only planning on building 12 of them, which I think the key is usually you go with a 3-to-1. You have to assume a 3-to-1 ratio of 1 being deployed at sea, right? 1 being in maintenance, being repaired or whatever, and then 1 docked. So at any one given time, if you have 3 submarines, 1 will be on deployment. Yeah. So if you have 12, then you could assume 4 will be deployed at any given time, which is a good deterrent, right? Having 4 deployed at any given time.
And in my view, and I only hope this is the actual case. I can't, I obviously don't have any connection whatsoever with this program. I don't work. I make refrigerator doors. I don't have any aspect of building this thing. But I think that at this point, which you can see with the nukes, which you can see with the warheads, everything else, it's all about sustainability at this point. It's all about making this thing work. And so I think that when it comes to this new submarine, they're going to design this thing to be reliable.
And not only that, but it says right on here, they want it to be a credible deterrent to credible threats through the year 2080.
Right. The only way you're going to lower your number of ballistic missile submarines out to sea is to make them more reliable. That's the only way you're going to do it.
So that's the other interesting thing, too. You're talking about the Ohio class having a few of the tubes not being used. I already forget the numbers, but I think it's only these Columbia class will have less tubes anyway.
They're only going to have 16, right? They're not going to have 20 like 20 the Ohio was.
I think it's 24, but yeah.
Right,
exactly. Yeah, so only 16.
Right. So they're going to always meet treaties. There's not going to be an argument. Do you really need 20 nukes on a ballistic? I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say.
If you could fit multiple warheads on it, I mean, just one missile is going to have, 8 warheads or whatever it's going to be.
Right.
I mean, it's more than enough.
I mean, and those platforms can shoot nukes from basically anywhere in the world. So, I mean, if you have 12 of them and you have 16 nukes on each of them and they're fully loaded, you could probably cover the whole world if you really wanted to.
Yeah, if you had 8 warheads on each missile and you had 12 missiles, that would be 128 warheads. I mean, that's
on one platform. Yeah, I mean,
and then that's for each one, and then you have 4 deployed at any given time. Right. I think eventually they're going to get to a point where, I mean, the silo-based missiles, they're fixed, right? They can't move.
Yeah. I
mean, they're kind of sitting ducks.
And not only that, but they're fixed in the fact that you're sure as fuck not gonna put a nuke in my backyard. And I live in Dallas, or whatever. Like shit's not gonna happen. Right. Like they're in these. Not only are they concentrated, but they're in a really small concentrated spot.
Well, they do keep them about a mile apart. Right. There's no silos that are within a mile of each other. Yeah. They do that on purpose. So if you try to target one of them, it's not gonna. And it detonates, it's not going to destroy the one next to it.
Right.
So they do kind of spread them out a little bit, enough, but you're right, they're still pretty concentrated.
Yeah.
But, if you get to a point where you can develop enough warheads or enough missiles to hit each one of them, then you're kind of screwed, right? So I think eventually we're going to get to a point where the submarine ballistic missile is going to be dominant. I think that's really the most important deterrent. The U.S. really tries to focus on this triad, right?
Right.
Where you have ballistic missile you have the ballistic missile submarines, you have the land-based ICBMs, and then you also have the bombers, nuclear bombs dropped from bombers. I think the nuclear bombs dropped from manned bomber aircraft is starting to go.
You can take them out. They're like cruise missiles.
Right. I mean,
aircraft
being able to fly right over the enemy and drop these bombs, it's the likelihood of that being successful is very, very low. We talked about that long range standoff weapon. Right. Maybe you can get that fired from long enough distance away where you're not going to be shot down by a SAM system, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of that old school technology is going to be towards like Yugoslavia or just these weird countries that may be housing weapons against us that aren't necessarily like in the middle of fucking this country that we can't attack. It's
Right,
just
Russia or China or something.
This old poor country that they're hiding stuff in, right?
You're right. So I think this Columbia class is going to be pretty important. It's going to replace the Ohio. They're only building 12 of them.
And it's attrition because we're building the next generation, but other than the UK and France, who's building the next generation? Nobody is.
No,
Russia's not building their next generation SSBNs.
Well, they've been building it recently. The Bory class.
Yeah, 1, 2.
They're building more than 1 or 2.
Nah, I mean, they're more special ops than they are. We're gonna shoot nukes. You know, they're using them for everything. They're not using them for just, oh, we're going to sit here and float out here and do nothing but do figure eights. We have the assets and the resources to put those things out there that are advanced, that have updated sonar technology that can hide really well compared to a few that could maybe hide maybe.
So, I know you can't get into it too much, and maybe you don't even... It seems like... from the 60s to the 2000s, and that's really, we only have that information because it's old enough to be declassified, right? But it seems like there was such an advancement where the level of sound it made, right, where it's quiet enough, it dropped down significantly over time. Do you know of much technological improvements that have been made? I really don't know between the LA class and then the Virginia class. I mean, is there a significant enough level of improvement? I mean, really, I guess what I'm getting at is, what do you think the level of technology improvement is from the Ohio class to this Columbia class? Do you think it's going to be significant enough to really make this thing be reliable and be credible enough until 2080? I mean, that's a far time in the future. It's 60 years in the future.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't know what kind of threats are going to be.
Yeah, 2080 is rough. But I can tell you right now, putting the technology into that thing that they have put into the Virginia classes is going to make that thing just... it's going to be so secret. I mean, it's going to be so silent. Right. I mean, it's going to be so scary. Because, I mean, ballistic submarines are loud. They're big, loud. They're not attack submarines. They're not designed to necessarily sneak really close behind you, right? They're ninjas, right? Where ballistic missile submarines are just hiding in the bushes.
Right, you have to be hidden.
Like you can ruffle the bushes all day, but as long as nobody's near the bushes, nobody cares, right?
Exactly.
You're not right behind somebody's neck getting ready to slit their throat. So there's a huge difference, and this gives them the aspect where they might be able to sneak up on fast attack submarines. Because you're talking about Romeo classes, you're talking about diesel submarines, where this thing is a nuclear-powered submarine that can slowly sneak up and sit there for a week. Not necessarily sitting on the bottom.
Yeah, but even if you have that capability, do you want to do that? Do you want to risk that with the nuclear ballistic missiles, with a boomer?
You're never going to risk it unless it's needed, right? You're never going to risk that thing unless...
tail a Russian submarine.
Remember, this is second strike.
Right.
This is going to be designed to get into that spot.
Yeah,
because
I mean, the range of the missiles, you don't need to really get into any spot.
And you don't have to. You don't
fire them from almost anywhere on Earth.
Oh, shit, yeah, they're like
10,000 mile range, or 10,000. I'm sorry, 10,000 kilometer range.
You can literally take out half the world with that thing, right?
Right.
But at the same time, if you are in that area with an attack submarine,
you can go shoot it.
I mean, well, you can hide.
Yeah.
I think at this point they're trying to hide them.
Right. That would be smarter, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. The interesting thing, you brought up the Virginia class, right? Or maybe I didn't. We both kind of talked about it a little bit. The Virginia class it's modular, right?
Right.
Do you remember hearing about that? So they're going to build like the block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4. So it's going to be able to be... So it's not just like they're going to build, okay, we have the final design specs for this class of submarine. We're going to be building these for the next 30 years.
Right.
Now, each one is going to be more and more complicated and have more technology as it goes along. So the block 4 subs are going to be much better technology and more improved over the block 1 class.
Right.
Virginia subs. And I wonder if they're going to do anything like that with this Columbia class.
Oh, of course they are.
They're probably going to make it modular with off-the-shelf technology, things like that to keep the price lower.
It's difficult.
Hopefully, and also be able to upgrade the technology as it goes.
It's difficult to say if it's modular. There was a lot of technology that went into making the Virginia class modular. I mean, they have these huge welding systems and stuff you can look at online.
Yeah.
These like huge Stargate looking things that weld these things together and stuff. They're crazy. I mean, and you're talking about a Columbia class, which is double the size, right? So,
Right.
I mean, you could make that modular, but the thing about modular is it's cheap and efficient, quick. You need fast attack submarines to be 2 or 3 a year, where you don't really need ballistic missile submarines that quick. You need them once every year or two. You need them to be a deterrent, whereas this thing is actually could possibly be a warship.
I actually have this pulled. It was right underneath the Columbia class. Yeah, they're building 2 or 3 a year. Exactly. So 2020 they have 3 planned a year. 300 looks like $3 billion each.
Yeah.
10 billion for 3 of them. So a little less than a little more than 300 million.
Yeah, they treat them like
3 billion
destroyers
each.
or anything else, right? I mean, they're
Right,
they're a
just keep rolling them
vital
out.
they're a vital warship aspect.
Right. You
Right.
want to have 50, 60 of these things.
Ballistic
spread
missile
across the world.
submarines are
You got just a couple handful of them.
they're fucking floating, destroying platforms. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're not going to use them to do anything other than deter.
I hope we get some good pictures of it soon because their construction. It says right here, construction will begin in 2021. So that's not too far away. And then
Yeah, they're in the design process right now.
they'll be delivered to the U.S. Navy in 2028. So that's going to be a little farther away.
Yeah,
But
it's a
maybe
long
we can
time.
get some new pictures of it. So it looks like, according to here, you see the RDT&E, the Research, Development, Testing, and Evaluation. You see that price slowly getting less. So 2018, right? You got $1 billion spent in research development. And then 2019, it was down to $700 million. And then for 2020, it's down to 500 and change.
Right.
So the research and development process obviously gets lower over time because you finally have the design all planned out. You still have to do some testing and evaluation of it. But you see the price jumping here for procurement. And obviously they're not building these things till 2021, but they're going to start getting those lead materials.
Oh, you got it.
Are we back online? Did just update the number of viewers. Sorry about this. If you can hear us, we are having a few more technical difficulties.
Oh, so we got kicked off.
I know I'll never get sponsored by AT&T, but if you're listening, never buy AT&T.
Yeah,
Don't do
seriously.
it. If I had a choice in this apartment complex I live in, I would not buy it.
It's
So
probably
if I'm
time.
connected to something.
Yeah, it's probably time to start winding down.
Yeah,
anyways.
we got toward the end of it anyway. So if you can still hear us,
Whoever donated the $2, thank you very much.
oh
Appreciate
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, we are making next to nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the one sponsor we're grateful for.
And it's
Commando
all fun.
Store.
Like, we do this for fun. So it
Exactly.
is what it is.
Yeah,
but
we should say that.
I want to quit my job.
Yeah, so donate specifically for Eric so he can quit his job.
Yes, for me. For me.
But it is a lot of fun. I really do enjoy doing it. And you know what the best part of it is being able to interview the people.
Yeah.
That's the most fun for me, at least.
Yeah.
Being able to talk to these people.
Yeah.
Because doing my videos, the Covert Cabal videos that I do, it's one thing. I read about a lot of stuff and I make the video. But actually being able to talk to people who have lived it and have done it, like you, for example, or the Fighter Pilot podcast guy, or really anyone else, it's a whole different thing. I mean,
Right.
it becomes much more real when you
Right.
have somebody who has actually flown the aircraft, or somebody who actually was in the B-2, like we had with Jeff Bolton.
Right.
Different people like that. So, you know, if you're in the position, I'll have to shamelessly advertise ourselves again. Let me pull it up here. It's our Patreon. If you go to patreon.com /TACOps, I believe it's /TACOps, or it could be /TACOps podcast. Let's see if the internet's working enough to even pull this up.
There it is.
It is working. So let me pull it up here. So if you type in Tech Ops Podcast, you know, if you're in the position, I do realize it's a lot of money. I absolutely realize that. I mean, I'm in the same position. There's a couple of YouTubers that I actually do support, I think it's a couple different gaming channels. They play a couple different military-themed games. But it's a lot of money. Everything costs you money per month, right? Yeah. Your cell phone, your internet, whatever you're going to have, it costs you money per month, and we're asking for more money per month. But if you're in a position to do it, I really appreciate if you consider it. TechOps, patreon.com/TechOps.
Yeah, and I know we don't have a whole lot of rewards on there. We haven't had a whole lot of interest yet, but I mean, if you guys donate money to us, we're definitely gonna make it special for you guys. So please do. We will definitely do what we can to make it special for you if you help us out,
right?
And help me quit my job.
and we're working on a few big things too. Like we have a few other things in discussion. We won't get into that. But the one I really wanted to, and maybe we can start almost a GoFundMe or something, is get, I don't know, should I say it? Strategic Sentinel.
Yeah. He's
been talking about going up to Area 51 with us. I talked to him on the phone. Don't blow up his spot or anything, but, it's a possibility we could have him on some things and go and take a trip up to Area 51, go up on Tikaboo Peak there. We have a few different things planned. So if you're in the position, look into it. Other than that, I think we're about done for this episode this week.
Yeah, man, we got some crazy connections going on. I mean, we're meeting actual official people. Like, I've been talking to the Naval Chief of Information and trying to get a ride on a submarine and stuff. Cool. Like, yeah,
that would be a dream of mine.
Yeah,
literally a dream of mine. I've had several dreams about going on a submarine. Mostly they're nightmares. I'm like, oh fuck, I just signed up for a 3-month deployment where I'm stuck on the submarine.
Yeah.
But this probably won't be a 3-month thing, right?
No, just
a day or a few hours or maybe a day or two. But yeah, that would be incredible.
But yeah. So like we've literally had super interest in what we're doing. So we can't fly out to Norfolk to get on a submarine without somebody helping us, fly out there. Like I just don't have the income to just pay for all my flights to fly all over the United States to do cool videos. So it is what it is. We need some support to help.
And we've been spending. I mean, I don't know if it's. I mean, we're being honest. I don't want to get into too much detail, but we've actually spent more money than we made.
Oh,
like between we won't get into it, but we've spent whether it's between different people helping us do this or that, or paying for the hosting of the podcast, different things like that. So
the hosting, the video, I mean everything. Just myself in general, I've been in this game for 5 years and I've only done anything but spend money.
I mean, I can't even say anything compared to you.
People I love, and
right.
I just
it's a labor of love though. It's fun.
It's
fun. Even if we continue to spend our own money, it's worth it.
Yeah,
it's absolutely worth it.
It's like fun. I always imagine it like a guy building a race car and going to drag race it. Like we spend our entire week going over the news and coming up with shit, and then this is our drag race. We get to so we're really nervous. Okay, so what are you gonna talk about? I don't want to. No, we sit here and argue. Not to argue, but we talk with each other. Like I don't know about that. Like I don't want to talk about that because I don't know enough shit. Like okay, well, like this is our drag race. Like we spend a lot of time and love in this, and we really appreciate you guys. Even just listening. You don't have to donate any money. Just listening is great, but we really.
That's the most fun part too, is seeing the little bit of people who go out of their way to give us a $1 here, $1 there. Let me see if I could find it in here real quick. I'm not sure if I will be able to, but someone did donate $2. I mean, even the small amount we're grateful for. So that's kind of like the Christmas present at the end. We're doing it for fun. It's a lot of fun to do. And then it's like a little gift we get. So we're definitely grateful that. Sorry we can't find your name right on here. The chat cut out on us.
Yeah.
But we're grateful for that. So is that it then? I think next week, or actually I know next week we have a guest lined up.
Yeah, we got a guest next week.
A very interesting guest. We've worked hard to get this person on for a while.
Back to the interviews, man. It's gonna be good.
We're going to have to be on our Johnny on the spot here.
Submariner. It's going to be fun.
This is someone we've kind of hoped to have on for a while, and we finally got it hammered down to next weekend.
If you like whiteboards.
Okay.
Just a little hint.
That might have given it away. But anyway, that's about it for this week. Thanks for joining us.